From a technology perspective, we see three key innovations coming online over the next 12 months. One is to take the data pipeline, so think of governments publishing data as open data and really massively scale that, automate it, streamline it in such a way that we can take a lot more data in and make that process entirely frictionless for government organizations. The second big innovation over the next 12 months is going to be around the consumption experience. So how do we move beyond a catalog metaphor for data sets? How do we create a more human-friendly discovery experience for people? And once they find the data that they're interested in, how do we change the paradigm so that they're not interacting with different variations on the spreadsheet, but rather interacting with information the way that they expect as digital consumers? And then the last big innovation that we expect in the next 12 months is really about our ability to add capabilities that provide first-class capabilities for the government employee to consume and use their own data in the course of performing their jobs. That's a big trend in open data. It's perhaps a bit of a secret that government employees themselves are first-class users of their own data, and they need a set of capabilities that are perhaps slightly different than what we provide for citizens and developers. This is the stuff that we think about all the time, and we see a few big, might I say, tectonic changes happening in open data technology. One has to do with scale. I mean, we believe that we're at 1 to 2%, perhaps 3% of all available data that can be democratized and that can be opened up. And as the ecosystem around this data, which we're trying to catalyze and support through the open data network, starts gaining momentum, the scale at which open data happens is going to be massively different. And obviously massively bigger. So we see a lot of big engineering challenges ahead of us in terms of how to scale this pretty massively. That's one. A second big tectonic change has to do with the type of data that's flowing through the open data ecosystem. I think a lot of the data today is kind of static, that comes from kind of big legacy enterprise systems, and we're going to see a lot more streaming data come into the mix from sensor-based networks, even from human networks, i.e. people with mobile devices, and that will be a big part of what it means for data to become open and flow into people's lives. The third big tectonic change that we also are expecting, in fact, we're engineering explicitly into our products, is how do we take this open data and allow it to permeate our lives, our digital lives. For example, when I go onto Google and I search what is the budget for education in the city of Seattle, I shouldn't really get links to web pages or even data sets. I should actually get a number and an answer. The same goes for using Yelp and Zillow and all these mass consumer apps out there. Data absolutely needs to flow seamlessly and contextually from government silos, government databases, onto that consumer endpoint. Those three big things are definitely in our future. It's also a safe bet at this point to say that we're going to see analytics become an increasingly important component of open data. It's not enough to liberate data. It's not enough to optimize it for consumption. I think we're going to see analytics being done at a scale never seen in human history before, and we really mean that, simply because the volume of data that will come online and the types of problems we will apply that data to are so broad, so deep, that not as a company, but as a movement, as an ecosystem, we're going to be challenged, but also offered this amazing opportunity to apply data to solve a range of really thorny, chronic problems, like like any of the urban problems that we know well as residents in a city. Most definitely yes, and here's why. And it's not so much that it's akin to the revolution that has been the web and the internet. It is part of that revolution, because if you think about the big things that have changed in our lives over the last 10 to 15 years, you can kind of trace them back to democratization of everything, democratization of computing. We now have access to very, very powerful, cloud computing technology very inexpensively. The democratization of connectivity. We're always on. Everywhere we go, there is access to Wi-Fi and different kinds of network. We're always connected, and that ubiquity of connectivity is part of that democratization process. There's democratization of just from an engineering standpoint, of programming tools and languages and algorithmic models and very powerful stuff that used to live entirely in the proprietary world. Now it's available as open source to any developer that wants to use it. Democratization of education. It's a phenomenon that is changing literally how we educate children and educate ourselves as adults on a continuing basis. And open data is part of that big movement, part of that big revolution. And what we deal with is the democratization of data. And this data, as we all know, today mostly sits in idle, inert in government databases, and it's simply too valuable to remain that way. And as we bring it online, as we open it up, as we open up the different ways that this data can be used and accessed and reused and turned into fuel for innovation, innovation at the same scale that we've associated with the other big changes will happen as a result. Yeah, all of a sudden government is hip, it's cool. People are leaving industry, high-tech industry, finance, healthcare. They're moving from Silicon Valley to government even. I mean, that's how significant this change has been. To be fair, government, from an IT perspective, sometimes gets that brand of not being on the cutting edge. I think every government CIO will agree with that. However, government does produce very big innovation from the research that it funds in every field. So we have to at least acknowledge that. When it comes to open data, I think necessity is the mother of all invention. And the reason that innovation has been dialed up really, really high as a result of the open data movement, we think there are four factors kind of combining to create that necessity to do things differently and therefore to innovate. First of all, if you're a mayor, governor, any kind of government leader, or even a frontline employee in government, you are acutely aware that citizen expectations have shifted. They have changed. Everyone demands access to information anywhere, anytime, on their device of choice. They want answers to questions, they want them instantaneous, and they want that experience to be on par with what they experience every day in their digital lives. So all of a sudden, boom, government has to change. They have got to adopt those standards as their own. The second big shift that has happened is around the expectation that we as citizens living in a democracy have of our government. We expect it to be transparent. We expect it to be accountable. We expect it to use data to make better decisions. And to their credit, government leaders expect the same thing of themselves. So now that data is no longer scarce, now that it's abundant, now that we have tools to use the data, we have infrastructure that doesn't take years to implement and all that stuff, now let's use that data to improve governance overall. And lastly, just from a budgetary perspective, if you're a government CIO, kind of looking at this sprawling IT infrastructure you've inherited from many predecessors, and you look at the awesome challenge you have to transform that organization and modernize it and kind of help move it to the 21st century, the tools of yesterday are not going to provide solutions for the types of problems you're facing today. So as a CIO or as the technology leader, you're looking for a radically different approach. An approach that includes the cloud, an approach that thinks of data as a platform, not as a series of redundant silos. I mean, there's an entirely new architecture that also includes thinking of the ecosystem around you as an extension of your own, as opposed to kind of more of the siloed thinking that has permeated the past. So what has happened, I think, and it's high time that it happened, is this notion that it's good enough for government work. That's something that you hear at times, is both wrong, outdated, even dangerous going forward, because everybody expects more, and smart CIOs and smart government leaders totally get that and are doing exactly that. First of all, as a technology company, certainly as the person leading a team that's responsible for Socrata's products and the engineering team behind them and everyone at Socrata, it is, it's a privilege to say that 200 marquee public sector organizations around the world have chosen Socrata as their platform. And the reason, I think, is actually pretty simple. When we set out to focus on open data and government, we designed what we thought was a very different proposition from what was common around government. We said, look, it's evident that this open data philosophy and everything we've built around what is the value of open data has a transformative power and impact, and in a very lasting way. But let's build the technology to deliver that, but also let's expressly make that technology fast to implement, easy to use, and inexpensive. And unfortunately, these are not attributes that are heard very often in and around government. So we've done that, and we've used the cloud to deliver that proposition in a very concrete way. We've also taken a completely different approach to designing and developing products. We don't build products for Walmart or ExxonMobil, and then kind of put a marketing veneer around them and take them to government and say, yeah, we have a public sector practice. No, we focus exclusively on the government sector. And when we design products, we design them in partnership with our customers. They are market-driven products. We identify problems, we work with customers, we enlist them as design partners, we build something, we test it out, we iterate, and then we scale it in such a way that it becomes a cloud service that thousands of other similar organizations, cities, counties, states, NGOs, can start using right away for a fraction of the cost of the prevailing models of big custom development projects, big enterprise systems, things that take millions of dollars and multiple years to implement. So that's how we believe the Socrata proposition has resonated and scaled with our buyers, with our customers. What I hear all the time are things around, for example, help us scale this, help us make this open data program and our entire data strategy more streamlined, more automated. Let us build kind of this industrial data pipeline as opposed to putting a lot of manual work into the flow of data. So that's something we hear about quite a lot. The second thing we hear from our customers all the time is keep investing in the user experience. One of the reasons why we picked Socrata is you guys deliberately have chosen to build, experiences that allow many different people to access data. So keep investing in that user experience because, and as a product person, this is something I take to heart. They say that in parts of our day where we're using Socrata, it's often the most delightful part of our day from all the systems that we use, right? So we try and constantly fulfill that ask. The third thing they ask is help us connect what we're doing to what our peers are doing. The Open Data Network is really a manifestation of their intense desire and their realization that we could combine data from themselves, from their peers, from industry, and create something that is much greater, much more valuable than any one organization's data. And then finally, they say within that context of combining data from all these different sources and creating this network and this effect around the network, help us really analyze the data, and let's move from a paradigm of publishing data to a paradigm of providing insights, of visualizing problems, of figuring out how to solve those problems using data, and really inviting people in to the process of coming up with solutions. So those tend to be the most common things we hear. My expectation is that the ultimate legacy of Socrata is the fulfillment of our mission as a company, which is to use data to improve the world around us. So, and I believe that force for good that you refer to, at the end of the day, it's really about empowering people, empowering citizens to get answers to their questions, empowering them to figure out what's going on in their cities, in their countries, empowering them to use this information to improve the quality of their daily lives. It's also about, in terms of outcomes, empowering government organizations. As a technologist, which we, most of us are at Socrata, part of our legacy is, getting government leaders to think in terms of platforms, because platforms is what's changing technology on a massive scale, and that we experience the result of in our daily lives. And by government moving away from the old way of doing things, the stovepipes, the bespoke stuff, the multi-year custom development projects, and embracing platforms is, I think, part of our lasting legacy. The last part I will mention is that, we want to impact the lives of, ordinary citizens. We want to impact the way that government operates, but we also want to impact the ecosystem around us. We're a technology company. Yes, we are leading big aspects of, kind of building out the open data world, but we're also part of a movement, part of a community, and it's not, kind of an idealistic approach. It's, there is such a thing as an open data economy that we want to see flourish, that we want to see build, and it's incredibly fulfilling for us to have our platform and our technology powers, at least parts of this ecosystem, and connect the dots between all the different participants in this network. So when we build, when we deliver our core competencies as a technology company, which are around data science, user experience, and massively scalable data systems, these innovations have a place to flow to and serve as a foundation for others to build on as well. So that I believe will be, I hope, the lasting legacy that Socrata is able to provide, to the world around us.